Some stories aren't meant to be heard at night, but you clicked anyway. Now there's no turning back.
The other side of reality, there is a sound your brain makes right before you fall asleep. It's a low, almost imperceptible hum, like the vibration of an old refrigerator deep inside your skull. Most people never hear it because their consciousness fades before the frequency peaks. I learned how to stay awake and listen to it. That was my first mistake. My name is Elias Thorne. I'm 34, and for the last 7 years, I have worked as a neurotechnician at the Vanguard Institute of Somnology. My obsession, my absolute, life-consuming obsession was sleep paralysis. You know the feeling. You wake up in the dead of night, your mind entirely lucid, but your body is encased in an invisible concrete shell. You feel a crushing weight on your chest. You see shadows moving in the corners of your room. Science dictates that this is simply remitonia, a natural mechanism where the brain paralyzes the body to stop us from acting out our dreams. The shadows, they say, are just hypnagogic hallucinations. The brain panicking. But science cannot explain why, across thousands of years and completely disconnected cultures, everyone sees the exact same shadows. The old hag. The Hat Man. The Watchers. I hypothesized that sleep paralysis wasn't a hallucination. It was a veil. A localized thinning of reality that occurs when human consciousness is suspended between two states. I believe the paralysis was a defense mechanism, a biological deadbolt keeping whatever lies in that liminal space from getting in. I built a device to bypass the deadbolt. The other side of reality, 11:42 p.m., the descent, my basement laboratory was freezing. The chill kept the server racks from overheating, but tonight, it served a secondary purpose. It would keep my physical body's core temperature low, slowing my heart rate to mimic deep REM sleep while my mind remained chemically and electrically stimulated. I sat in the reclined examination chair, attaching the cold, gel-rimmed EEG nodes to my scalp. I inserted the 4 into the crook of my left arm. It was loaded with a proprietary synthetic compound, a cocktail of modafinil, dimethyltryptamine, DMT, and a selective serotonin receptor blocker. It was designed to force my body into REM sleep while keeping my prefrontal cortex, the logic and awareness center of the brain, wide awake. I tapped the keyboard, initiating the sequence. Experiment log, day 402. I spoke into the hanging microphone, my voice echoing in the sterile room. Subject is Elias Thorne. Administering the compound in 3, 2, 1. I pressed the plunger. The onset was immediate. A cold rush of mercury flooded my veins. Within seconds, my limbs grew impossibly heavy. The hum began that low, vibrating frequency at the base of my skull. It grew louder, morphing into a deafening roar of static, like an untuned radio being cranked to maximum volume. I tried to swallow, but my throat refused. My chest tightened. The paralysis had set in. My body was asleep. But my eyes were wide open, staring at the acoustic tiles of the ceiling.
No, stay back!
The other side of reality, 11:58 p.m., the threshold, the hum abruptly stopped. The silence that followed was unnatural. It was thick, heavy, and suffocating. It felt like being submerged in dark water. Then, the geometry of the room began to fail. The sharp corners of the basement blurred. The harsh fluorescent lights dimmed into a sickly, bruised purple hue. The air grew dense, smelling of ozone, ancient dust, and something undeniably metallic. Like old blood. I am hallucinating, I told myself. The DMT is active. Heart rate is steady at 45 BPM. Keep observing. But it didn't feel like a hallucination. It felt like a curtain had been ripped away. The room wasn't changing, the illusion of my laboratory was fading, revealing what was actually there. A shadow detached itself from the wall near the server racks. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was a three-dimensional absence of light. It was tall at least 7 feet with limbs that were far too elongated, possessing too many joints. It moved with a jerky, stop-motion erraticism, gliding silently across the linoleum floor. My heart rate monitor began to spike. Beep, 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 beep. The entity stopped at the foot of my chair. It had no face. Where features should have been, there was only a swirling vortex of visual static. But I could feel it looking at me. I could feel its absolute, bottomless hunger. Another shadow stepped out of the server rack. Then another from the doorway. Soon, there were half a dozen of them, standing in a semicircle around my paralyzed body. The other side of reality, 12:14 a.m., the breach, terminate the experiment, my logical brain screamed. My right index finger was resting on the manual kill switch, a small button that would flood my system with adrenaline and snap me awake. I sent the command from my brain to my finger. Press it. Nothing happened. The deadbolt was fully disengaged. The bridge between my mind and my body was severed. The tallest entity leaned over me. The temperature in the room plummeted so rapidly that frost webbed across the lenses of my glasses. The weight on my chest became unbearable, cracking my ribs. The entity brought its static-filled face inches from mine. And then, it spoke. It didn't use sound. The words crawled directly into my mind like maggots burrowing into soft earth. You are awake. The voice was a cacophony of thousands of whispers, male and female, overlapping in a chorus of agony. For millennia, we have watched you sleep. The wall was so thick. The lock was so heavy. But you opened the door. Panic, pure and primal, flooded my consciousness. I fought with everything I had. I tried to scream. I tried to thrash. I tried to blink. Nothing. I was a prisoner in my own flesh. The entity slowly reached out a long, tapering finger made of black smoke and pressed it against the center of my forehead. Flesh is warm, the entity whispered. We have been so cold. For so long. I felt something slipping. It was a sensation entirely alien to the human experience. It wasn't my physical body moving, it was myself. My consciousness was being violently uprooted, peeled away from my physical form like wet wallpaper. I watched in silent, screaming horror as the black smoke of the entity began to pour into my open mouth, my nostrils, my tear ducts. The other shadows watched, trembling in what looked like ecstatic anticipation.
What is this to this? Get away fast!
The other side of reality, 12:30 a.m., the other side, the transfer was agonizing. The sensation of being untethered from reality is a terror no human mind is built to withstand. Suddenly, I gasped. The heavy, crushing weight was gone. The paralysis was gone. I could move. I scrambled backward, breathing heavily, my heart pounding in my non-existent chest. I looked down at my hands. They were translucent, shimmering, made of nothing but dim light and static. I looked up. I was hovering near the ceiling of my laboratory. The sickly purple hue remained. The cold remained. But I was no longer in the chair. Down below, sitting in the recliner, was my body Elias Thorne. The floor was still in my arm. The EEG nodes were still attached. Slowly, agonizingly, my physical body sat up. It ripped the nodes from its scalp with rough, jerky movements. It tore the floor from its arm, not caring about the blood that began to streak down the pale skin. My body stood up. It moved awkwardly at first, stumbling like a newborn foal, testing the joints, getting used to the gravity and the weight of bone and muscle. From my vantage point on the ceiling, trapped in the cold, silent void of the other side, I screamed. I screamed with a voice that made no sound. My body stopped. It slowly tilted its head back, looking directly up at the ceiling. Looking directly at me. The face was mine. The eyes were mine, but the expression was utterly foreign. It was a smile, a wide, impossibly broad smile that stretched the facial muscles to their absolute breaking point. The thing wearing my skin raised a hand and gave me a small, mocking wave. Then, it turned around, walked up the basement stairs, and opened the door to the outside world. To a world full of billions of sleeping, vulnerable people. The door clicked shut, leaving me behind in the dark. I am still here. I am so cold. And the other shadows in the room, they are starting to look at me.
If you love stories that stay with you after midnight, subscribe. More darkness is coming. Now, there's no turning back.